And now we've got a new stream set up. Let's see if this will work in terms of getting things back and going. The last stream we had Mick Gillespie freeze, and the lighting went off, so lighting is now fixed. And we'll see if we can get people back in. And we'll see if I can be rejoined by Mick. There's Mick, rejoining in. And so let's get Mick back aboard. And let's get things going once again. So here comes Mick back in, and we can continue to discuss. Hey. Mick, sorry, things got frozen before.
Gotta love
right,
technology.
but here we go. So let's go into our baseball lingo today. Last week,
all right,
we began with can of corn. This week, what do you say we discuss the old Texas Leaguer?
Yeah, love it. As I get
Is Texas Leaguer your preferred term? Do you prefer flair, blooper?
I mean, I'll use it if, to me, a Texas Leaguer's, I mean, this is, and I didn't look this up because I kind of just want to go off the top of my head and things that I talk about, you know, on a normal game basis. But I picture a Texas Leaguer as described by Brooks Robinson when I used to watch him as the color guy on the Orioles broadcast. He would talk about the Texas League not having fences, and then the outfielders would play really deep. And then somebody would hit like a high fly ball, but it would be shallow, and no one would be able to get to it because they'd be so far back, so that you run miles and you can't get into it. You can't get to it. So for me, a Texas Leaguer's got to be extra high, not like a bloop, but it's got to be like a really high but shallow fly ball. And just the way that the positioning is, if it's a no double set, you see them sometimes, like late in a game where they'll put the outfield back near the warning track, or maybe you have a slow outfielder, or maybe it was just misjudged. But to me, it's got to be extra high and shallow to be a Texas Leaguer.
Well, let me relate that to my favorite term for it, dying quail, right? Or a dying swan, because it gets up there so high and then it just falls right out of the sky like somebody shot the baseball.
Yeah, I've used that one, flare. I don't know, like, it's whatever comes to mind when I watch the ball, and I just want to be really fast at relating what I see with the term that I use to describe it. So, I mean, a Texas Leaguer to me is like extra high, and then a flare could be, or dying quail to me isn't quite as high. I don't know.
I'll go a bit different from you. I usually, especially if I'm early in the season or maybe I'm tired, whatever it might be, I might not have the word on the tip of my tongue. When I was in college broadcasting a football game, somehow I blanked out on the word punter. He's the guy. He's the guy who's gone out there to kick the ball. It's fourth down. He's got to kick it. He's going to kick it to the other team. The snap, and he punted it. It's a punter. So sometimes just
that happens.
Just to make sure, I will write that word down or write down whatever it might be on my scorecard, because I know that in recent games I've been calling the same play or different little lofters the same thing when they're not. I might call a humpback line drive or a flare or a blooper. Humpback line drive to me is caught in the infield. Humpback line drive is not a Texas Leaguer.
Mm-hmm. No. No. Humpback line drive's a totally different play. I'll hear kids that are just starting out, they'll call a ground ball a line drive, or something like that. And you got to say, hey, look, you sounded great there, except everything you said was wrong, It's like, here's a smash to third, and it's, a line smash to third. It's like a slow ground ball. And you're like, like it was like what they were going to say. And that was just the way that it was going to be. But I always use this to improve on stuff like that. And it happens, by the way, where you're on the air and you don't find the word that you want. I'll go to bed at night and try to visualize difficult plays and in my mind, think about the words that would describe them best. And then when a similar situation pops up, I'm ready.
Going back to that line drive, Where I've had trouble, or where I know other broadcasters will fall into the trap, is when you're seated so low that the ball comes off the bat on a line and then it's a one hop backhand to the shortstop. And so, have you ever heard a broadcaster say this?
Mhm.
Line drive to short, he gloves it and throws to first. And the young broadcasters who will send me that
Yeah,
demo, I'll
yeah.
go, why did he have to throw it to first if he gloved a line drive?
Well, I've heard big leaguers do that. Not the greats, but guys that are, that are on the radio, and maybe they thought that it was going to be a line drive. I call those blue darters. Because I'm just imagining like those low line drives that have spin, and eventually you're going to hit the ground and bounce. So it really is a line drive, but eventually it's going to bounce and be played, whether it's got what spin backwards or forwards. But yeah, I mean, like I'll hear stuff like that, or it's like the guy swings and ground. It's hit to the shortstop, and there's one out. You don't even know what happened. Like it. In this job, you got to try to find those details that describe it, and then once you get those details down, you find more details, and then you find more details to the point where you're talking about someone making a backhand stab, moving to his right, and setting their feet, and a strong throw, and all that. You want to get to the point, like on a Texas leaguer, that where you have positioned the defense, and so people have an idea that, hey, look, the defense is pretty deep right now, and then there's a shallow fly ball. I mean, you can visualize it. I think John Miller does such a good job of like noticing that the defense is deep, so he sets you up for it. Or it's a deep fly ball, and but they're back there, because the defense is deep. It's like going over those things and being attentive to what is actually happening before the play, and kind of having that sixth sense sometimes about what could possibly go down is something that I think you can develop over the course of
I want to go
doing this
back to,
job.
because you mentioned the word smash. I think that helps you avoid problems. If you say just how hard the ball is hit off the bat, sizzled toward short, smashed toward short, backhanded on the
Yeah.
first hop, or two hops, or short hop pickup by Johnson, whatever it might be, there it is. You know that the ball was hit hard, you know how he grabbed it, and you can slow it down and call the rest of the play.
Right. Right. Yeah. But I think what you can get into the habit of doing is anticipating what is going to happen next without actually watching it. You want to anticipate, but you also want to let it play itself out. So you're not going, well, there's a smash to third, and it's like a very slow topped ball. It's like people are. If anyone has the game on in their headset at the ballpark, or they're watching it on the video feed, they're going, what is this
Have
guy
you,
talking about? When you're on the road and you're on
have you ever
radio, no
seen a
one
batter
knows the
reach
minor
out?
leagues, because
Like there's a pitch low and away, and he just reaches out, puts his bat on, and you're going, he got nothing on it. And the ball carries off to the warning track before it's caught.
yeah, sometimes. Well, if you can get, I think that can happen if you square the ball up, even if you don't get a great swing. Where it wasn't a great swing, but you made great contact. Um, but at the same time, I mean, it's like you go out there and from our vantage point, you try to call the game the
Back to
best you
Texas Leaguer. You know the Hawk Harrelson term?
can.
Duck
No, what
snort,
is it?
which came from duck fart
Oh
because
yeah, yeah,
exactly the feathers muffle,
yeah.
soft hit. Yeah, all those different terms.
What are we gonna do without Hawk? Yeah, what are we gonna do without Hawk Harrelson
I
this year?
mean, we could tell stories and we'll enjoy Sony and Jason Benetti.
Yeah,
You were
yeah.
mentioning about the Texas League and the story that the walls were pushed a ways back. Have you ever seen photographs of the old University of Texas baseball stadium with the cliff? There's a cliff.
No.
This is now long since played, decades and decades ago, but there was a cliff from center to right center. And so if you were the right fielder, you had to choose, do you play on top of the cliff, and anything hit below, it's either the second baseman's ball or the center fielder's ball, or do you play below the cliff and anything above you is a home run? It was a two-tiered outfield.
Really? I'd have to look it up. I
They
cannot
built their
believe that.
baseball field on a mountainous ridge.
Really. Hmm. Well, I guess when you're looking for a spot to put a baseball stadium, sometimes if the property's not there, you just have
Power
to make
on.
do.
Exactly. I
Bluetooth.
was reading about more about the Texas Leaguer origins and all these insulting different ways of describing the players coming up. This was the turn of the 20th century. Any of those players who'd been signed out of the minor leagues in the Texas League. Oh, they get those Texas League base hits, those insulting little bloop shots that get up high and drop down in front of the
Hmm.
outfielder. You ready to go to our call of the week?
Hmm. Yeah.
So this week we are going back to October the 3rd, 1951. Bobby Thompson's shot heard round the world. Before I play it, what comes to mind for you?
Well, I mean, this is one of the most iconic plays in baseball history, and it also is part of the most bitter rivalry ever in baseball, right? Dodgers Giants, right? And so I mean, like, they were both in the same city. The Brooklyn Dodgers were like one of the, I mean, maybe they had different nicknames, but they were one of like the original teams, right? I mean, people loved them. And for the Dodgers to leave for California, I mean, it was just shocking. And then for the Giants to follow them, I mean, and go to San Francisco back then, after they had all these years of like constantly playing for, to get to the championship, and for them to both take off the other way and to the West Coast was surprising. But when I think about this, it's like, of all those battles between the Dodgers and the Giants in New York, this is the most iconic moment.
So just some backstory. This is game 3 of a best-of-3 playoff series between the Giants and the Dodgers. There are 2 broadcasters. There's Ernie Harwell and there's Russ Hodges. And this was the very first coast-to-coast TV broadcast. And they decided who was going to do the TV, who was going to do the radio. Ernie got the television. Mick, that's the plum assignment, right? You get national television for a game that everybody is watching if you're a baseball fan. And Russ is just on there doing the local radio for the Giants taking on the Dodgers.
Yeah, and isn't the story that like they didn't originally have one Russ's call, but someone like had recorded it at their house, and that's where we got this from? I think I remember.
It's exactly the story. Here it is from Ernie Harwell. Let me make sure that I've got this all right. That should be connected right. And let's see if this goes through. Maybe. Well, sometimes we do, don't we?
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I'll figure this out as we get everything all set and ready to go. So it was Ernie. There we go. And that's plugged in. Let's see if that now works. And if not, I can just pull my computer right up to it because I had it all connected via speaker system.
Bluetooth.
And let's see about this. Let's see if you can hear this well enough.
I hear it.
So this is Ernie Harwell telling his side of the story. Can you hear that all right?
Yeah, it might want to give us a little more volume, but yeah, it sounds good.
It was sent to Russ. He gave the man $10. Chesterfield Cigarettes put it out on a record. It became the most famous single sports broadcast of all time.
So just in case, I've got my speaker all set up and ready to go, and then the speaker let me down. We'll be all right. But from Ernie's perspective, and this was the story he just told, there was a gentleman who recorded this himself, and then he contacted Russ after the fact, and Russ gave him $10, and Chesterfield put it on a record and sold it around the country. That story was contradicted just a little bit. This is an article from 2010, written by Steve Goldberg, a senior producer at CNN, written for CNN.com. Quote unquote, this is Dateline, Atlanta, Georgia. When I was a little boy, my dad and I would sit on the floor next to his old reel-to-reel tape deck, taking turns into it, talking into it and playing our voices back. The same reel-to-reel he unwittingly used to gain his 15 minutes of fame. The man's name was Larry Goldberg, and he was 26 years old, and he had his mother record the ninth inning. He was not recording any other parts of the game. Age 26, he understands that he won't be able to listen. So, what he did was he had them record it for him. And then when he brought it back in, here was his reward for it. $100, not $10, as Ernie Harwell said, and access to box seats at the Polo Grounds the following season in reward for recording the shot heard round the world. The Giants won the pennant. The Giants won the pennant. Bobby Thompson hits a shot into the lower deck of the left field stands.
How much do you think that's worth?
With how much that call has been played, I don't think any single baseball call, and you'd have to find another call from any other sport that has been played as much as that one, and as famously as that one home run call.
Yeah. Huh. Yeah, you're right. I mean, like, you would think like $100 in a, box seats, I mean, it's great back then, but if you owned, that call, I wonder if you could own that call. I mean, could you? I mean, like, I don't even know how all that works, but you would think that the Goldbergs would still be getting residuals
and
off
they
of that,
did. And Russ Hodges, I think, has said the same thing. He said, "Where's my money? I'm the guy that made the call." Here it is. Your thoughts on the call?
They're going crazy.
Hey ho! I don't even know if he says "hey
I
ho"
don't
to
know,
finish
like-
it. That's just the way that I've always heard it, is "hey ho."
Yeah, I love it. I love the passion and the genuineness of that call. And look, I mean, that's the moment right there. I mean, I don't, that's done about as well as you can in that moment. I mean, we've had moments, but none of them like that,
It's
right?
received.
You're just trying to get the call
It's
and get out
received
of the way.
criticism that Russ Hodges lost control in the big moment. I don't know if you've heard this. There was, I think it might have been Red Barber who said, he lost control. He got caught up in the moment with his emotions.
Mm-hmm. Let's do a show about the difference in philosophy between Red Barber and Mel Allen one day. That would be fun to talk about. Because I think, like, on radio, local radio in particular, but radio in general, that, it's okay to show emotion. It's okay to have, to be able to frame a moment like that on radio. I think it's different than on television. You're not just up there to put a caption on a moment. You're there to paint the moment and the way that it happened. And I didn't think his voice cracked. I mean, I think that's a brilliant way to call it, because I could just, and maybe because I've seen the video, but I can see it. Like, I can just visualize, like, the sheer excitement of that moment when I hear that.
What do you think
call.
of the choice that he made? There was no gone, there was no home run, there was just, it's gonna be, I believe, right into the Giants won the pennant.
Yeah, that's the way it came out, and I liked it. Because, look, I knew. I mean, once, way back, and the Giants win the pennant. It's easy to figure out.
Two things that I want out of a broadcast call. I want clarity. I want to be able to understand as a listener what happened. It's clear. And I love for the broadcaster to reflect the moment. And we talked about last week, Vin Scully putting the moment of Hank Aaron passing Babe Ruth into the microcosm of everything that it stood for. And this reflecting the sheer exuberance of that time, right? The broadcaster has to snapshot that in the moment.
Yeah, well, that call by Vin last week, I mean, that's stuff that us mortals aren't able to do, like that's amazing. Like, and it's hard to compare that call to any other call, or any body to Vin because there just isn't any, and it's unfair because the guy's so good, and amazing. But I don't know. Look, I like this call. I think it was done well. And if I was listening to the radio and I was a Giants fan and I heard that, I would have gone nuts. And if I was a Dodgers fan, I'd have been brokenhearted.
I've got a surprise
right?
call for you. Like we paired up last week with Vin, with Kurt Gowdy and Milo Hamilton. There was another home
Mm-hmm.
run that won the Giants the pennant. You ready to hear it?
Yeah, let's do it.
Right, here it comes. Swing, and there's a drive deep into right field, way back there. Goodbye! A home run for the game and for the pennant. The Giants have won the pennant, and Travis Ishikawa is being clobbered by his teammates as he comes down the third base line, and he is mobbed at home plate. It's Travis Ishikawa. Travis Ishikawa with the Bobby Thompson moment. A walk-off home run to win the National League pennant by Travis Ishikawa. What a moment for the unlikely Giants left fielder for the biggest games here in 2014.
John Miller calling Travis Ishikawa. It's Travis Ishikawa. 2014, winning the National League pennant for the Giants and sending them onward to the World Series.
Yeah, I think about those Giants teams. What was it, Cody Ross? I mean, like they just had these guys that, like Ishikawa, that just got hot. They had the great pitching and defense, and those guys
Marcus
carried
Scudero that one year
to these World Series titles. Yeah. I mean, like it was like amazing. Like they just kind of, for 3 years, caught lightning in a bottle with someone. The Madison Bumgarner got him there the last one, but John Miller's great. I mean, I listened to him so much when I was a kid, like every night. Like I'd go to bed to the Orioles playing out on the West Coast and wake up the next morning and and the radio'd still be on, and he is so easy for me to listen to. I like him. I mean, and I get to see him at spring training, and and the funny part about him off the air is he's the same as he is on the air. Like he's got a story to tell you, and he kind of gets into details and makes you laugh, and he's a funny guy. So I listened to that, and I mean, no one remembers Ishikawa as Bobby Thompson, but and if you wouldn't have played that and you said, "Hey, who won the pennant for the Giants in in 2014?" I'd say, "I don't know, Buster Posey." I mean, who knows? But for them in the history of Giants baseball, that I'm sure Giants fans could point
the
right
peculiar
to it.
thing is Bobby Thompson hit that home run, and the Giants went on to lose the World Series in 5 quick games to the Yankees. Travis Ishikawa homers, and the Giants win just another World Series, 2010, 2012, and then again 2014.
Yeah, but the rivalry's not as bitter now as it was back then. I mean, the Giants and the Dodgers, both in the National League, shared the city of New York. That was before territorial rights. I mean, if you want to talk about bitter rivalry, Oakland and San Francisco have a bitter rivalry over territorial rights, whether it's football or baseball. I mean, it's constant, right? They didn't even want to let the Raiders play at the Giants Stadium this year, the 49ers, and then the A's forever have wanted a ballpark. I think they're getting it now, but the Giants blocked them. But it was the same type of thing in New York, but they just didn't have the territorial rights. And so they're competing for the same fans, maybe, for the supremacy of the National League. And then the Yankees are in the city, and they lose the World Series to the Yankees. None of us remember that. But yeah, I mean, great call by John Miller.
It almost feels like, I think about Philadelphia, when all the colleges get together before the start of conference play, and all of the Philadelphia basketball teams play one another. Or in the Appalachian League, Princeton and Bluefield are separated by a couple of blocks, and they're playing each other in the Mercer Cup. As you say, it's a neighborhood game. It's Brooklyn against the Giants, and then the winner of whoever bested the other in the National League would take on the Bronx. And there were the Yankees waiting in the World Series because they were in the World Series virtually every single year.
Yeah, the entire antitrust issue. I mean, that's so different when you because you won't see this anymore. I mean, I can't imagine a team moving into a city that already has a team because I don't think it's possible. I mean, it's even hard to I look at Nashville being a potential spot for a major league team, and I think baseball is behind the curve right now. They should be getting a team in Nashville if they were smart. It's one of the biggest cities. It's a great place. They support the hockey, the NHL hockey team and the NFL team, and the demographics fit it. Everything would be perfect. But then you got the Reds and you got the Braves, and it's like TV markets are involved and all that stuff. It's hard to move teams places. And basically my point. But back then, I mean, and maybe that's why, because those guys hated each other so bad, and I mean, they just despised each other, the Giants and the Dodgers. And then the funny part is they both head out to California together.
Because the ownership, there's some profit to be made on the West Coast. There's an untapped market. Back to the two calls. I would describe Russ Hodges' call as utter exhilaration. And to my mind, John Miller's call comes with such a great deal of surprise. He's picturing all the ways that the Giants can possibly win, take the pennant, go on to the World Series. I don't think he ever saw an Ishikawa home run coming.
Yeah. It's so difficult in those moments not to overdo it. You don't want to do too much. I mean, that's kind of why I like Hodges' call. It's like, hey, there it is, and then get out of the way and then hear the crowd. But I like John Miller's calls, all of them. That was I listen to a lot of Giants baseball. I like Fleming on there, and the TV guys are great too. But yeah, I mean, there's a lot more involved in the John Miller call. But you know what? Hey, he even tips his cap.
That's exactly. Well, if you're
and he grew up a Giants fan too. He grew up going to the Giants games. If you, Mick,
are broadcasting for the Giants and they win the National League, aren't you obligated to say at one point the Giants win the pennant?
I don't know. I think it's whatever comes to mind. I'm not a script out what my call is going to be guy. I just kind of let it go the way that it happens when it happens. And there's times where I look back and go, God, I wish I would have said this, or I wish I would have said that. But I mean, when you start scripting things out and then it doesn't happen the way that you think it's going to happen, then all of a sudden you sound scripted. I mean, people forgive you for not being perfect. None of us are, right? But I think if you're genuine, it's a lot easier to be forgiven.
In that moment, in that moment of excitement. So you have to describe what you see. It's got to be observational. It's got to be emotional in some sort. It's got to be introspective a little bit too. So your mind's got to be going. You've got to listen to your heart. You've got to say, what am I feeling right now? At the same time, what am I seeing right now? And so anything that you write beforehand, it might not be actually what you're seeing or feeling in the moment.
Right. Yeah, that's it. And, I've learned over the years that sometimes less is more. Describe the play and then get out of the way as fast as I can. Let the crowd do its talking. And because they'll tell the story better than I will. We had Chris Bryant here on a rehab. I think I've talked about this before. I don't know if on this show, but 7,000 people showed up on a Monday night. And I could tell before the game when we were talking that he wanted to hit a home run. And he did. And the place went bonkers. It was like, hey, here's the home, called the home run and got out of the way. And they were on their feet and screaming the entire time he jogged the bases. I think of all the home runs he hit last year, and I know he was injured, he didn't hit as many as normal. That's got to be, I would think, his most memorable home run, because even though there's only 7,000 people here compared to whatever they have at Wrigley or on the road, it was just pure enthusiasm, like because you don't have an MVP and a World Series champion like Chris Bryant playing the minor leagues a lot. But he's rounding the bases. They're still cheering. And boom, back out of the way. let them do that, and then come back in and kind of frame the moment up. I think I might have talked over the call, 5-6 years
That
ago.
big moment. I don't know about you. Speaking for me, when the crowd is going crazy at home or on the road, I love it because I don't have to do as much. If the crowd is dead
Yeah.
and there's nothing going on, then I feel like I have to supply all the energy. But if the moment is carrying itself, the energy is there already, and I'm like cresting along the wave of it like somebody surfing.
Yeah, I learned that from Larry Ward. I used to broadcast with Larry in Chattanooga. Ryan Hannigan had a game-winning single. Like, we used to flip-flop. I did 3, middle innings, and then we would flip-flop back and forth. He needed a an assistant back then because he had to have a cigarette break. So he'd zip out, get a cigarette, and I'd do the game. He doesn't smoke anymore, thank goodness. But I'd be on it. I mean, I was a young guy, and then what was great was Larry was so gracious that if we got into extra innings, we would go back and forth. So I'd get the 10th, he'd get the 11th, I'd get the 12th, and then that's how extra innings would go. So this one, I'd worked 2 years with him. 1 year, they had like 14 extra inning wins. And so I got to do a lot of those. And I remember one, that the Lookouts came back to win in maybe the 10th. Brian Hannigan, who had a lot of time in the big leagues, singled through the middle, and it won the game. And I'm describing it, and the place is going nuts. And Larry just reaches over and turns my mic off right in the middle of me talking. I'm like, what? And he's just like, and then you go back and listen, and he's just saying, hey, man, let the fans tell the story, and I just try to do that. Some places in the minor leagues, you don't have fans to tell the story, but a lot of places you do. And when those special moments happen, you want to be able to get out of the way and let them do their
A quick story about when I was working with my very first broadcast assistant in Lansing, 2011, and we would alternate innings. He took off for the weekend because he had to go attend a wedding, and he was driving back from that wedding, and we always alternated extra innings. I would take the 10th, he would take the 11th, I'd take the 12th, he takes the 13th. He contacts me, he says, I'm listening to the game sounds exciting. I'm saying, you bet. And then the Lugnuts come back and they tie up the game and they force extras. And I message him saying, your inning's coming up. You should get over here to the ballpark. And he arrived in his wedding attire, fresh from attending. So he's all suited up. We pop the headset on his head. It's his inning. And he calls the walk-off home run.
Hey, how about that? That's cool. And you're gracious. I think for me, if you were at a wedding, I'm getting a walk-off home run, So, give it to me. We didn't have any walk-off home runs for a couple seasons here. And then last year we had some, and they're so fun. I don't care what league it is. When someone hits a home run to win a game, a walk-off, like game's over, it's special. And
Here's
memorable.
The opposite. When I was with Jim Tocco and Montgomery, we had a checklist. We were checking off the days that the Montgomery Biscuits could not come back in the bottom of the ninth. It was something like 91, 92, 93 consecutive games, 0 ninth inning comebacks. And another one would pass and nope, didn't come back. Down by 1 bottom of the ninth, rallied, didn't come back. And so at some point they finally broke that streak, but that was the most unusual streak I can remember.
Yeah, I love Tocco, your old broadcast partner. He would have been a good major leaguer. I think he would have made it if he'd have stuck in this business. It's frustrating, Like, I remember you two in there working away. And I've never met a minor league broadcaster who was more well-respected and loved than him in the city that he broadcasted.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I'm talking about. So, but yeah, he would have stuff like that. He'd come in and tell you stuff like that and be like, okay. In the big leagues, someone else does that job. Hey, do you know? Have you noticed yet? Or you can go on the, all of the sites that keep all those things up, fan graphs and all that stuff. And we in the minor leagues, we do a lot of that.
this brings us into what we've been doing to end each show in terms of just sharing anecdotes on a particular
All right.
topic back and forth. A Jim Toko anecdote for you to get us going. And we're going to talk about when things go wrong during the game. But this one, nothing went wrong. It was just one of my
Oh, yeah.
favorite aspects of the way that he would call a game. Jim was the only broadcaster I remembered who would tell stories that would last over innings. So he'd say, right?
Oh, yeah,
To be
that's a no-no for
continued,
me.
bottom of the third. And so I'd turn it off. I'd go about. I did not travel with him to the majority of our road games. I'd go grocery shopping. I'd get back in my car, top of the sixth inning, and the story is still going.
Yeah, well, I used to do that too. And that talking about Larry Ward, he put a stop to that for me. And I'm glad. I mean, for me personally, I'm glad because that's what most people expect. And when, some of them, yeah, there's a time or two during the course of the season that I feel like I have to come back and finish a story. And because our fans will find me. There was a story I was telling about Reggie Jackson a few years ago and his dad playing in the Negro League in New Jersey. And I just love Reggie. I wanted to be Reggie as a kid, So anytime I can talk about Reggie. And it was at this date in baseball history, and I put a lot of time into it. It was really interesting, I thought. And the inning ended. And then I'm not on the air in the seventh. That's my partner's inning. And so I come back on in the eighth. It's a close game. I've got to talk about the game. Like, I can't go back to the Reggie Jackson story. So a couple of days later, a guy shows up to the booth, and he's just like, hey, what's the fun? Tell me this Reggie Jackson. So I'm like, oh, my God. So in those cases, you have to, you just maybe, it was like a 5-pitch inning or 7-pitch inning. I didn't get a chance to finish. Like I'll try to swing back in just a touch of the top of the seventh, even though I don't want to take anyone else's time away, to finish it just so that people can get out of their car. He said he hung around. He was waiting for the story. So we all learn from those
I was
things.
terrible with, I love giving trivia questions. And I sometimes have stopped now just because it takes mental energy. How do I find a trivia question that's not too hard, but not too easy, that gets people thinking? Well, what I would always do is I would give the trivia question top of the third inning. And I'd say, all right, I'm going to answer this bottom of the third, bottom of the fourth, whenever it was, give folks a chance to listen in, to answer in. And I would always forget because the game got too good. I just,
Right. Yeah. That's why you need a good
exactly.
engineer or producer. You get to the big leagues and you got a guy whose job is to hand you that blue card with the trivia question on it. I listened to the Orioles, and we talked about that this show, every show. I listened to them when I moved to Westminster. That's where I ended up graduating high school in Maryland, on a station called WTTR. And they always had this trivia contest in the bottom of the seventh inning for a Cranberry Mall gift certificate. And I think it was like the same 10 people that won all the time, including myself. But yeah, look, I know it's totally different type of trivia thing, but I had so much fun like winning those. And then, like you would run into other people and be like, hey, Mick Gillespie. Yeah. I mean, I do the trivia contest. Oh, I heard you won on there, like for a $20 gift certificate at Cranberry Mall, on the local station. But besides that, like I've never incorporated a trivia question into my broadcast. And it would be so easy to do with technology now, with Twitter and Facebook like we're on right now, to have that. And I'm sure there's people out there that would love to do it.
Interactive things to be able to play during the broadcast. I've done you make the call, where here's the play in the top half of the inning. It'll tell you what the rule is in the bottom half of the inning. Because when I was growing up watching television, do you remember that the National Game of the Week used to have those segments where they would show you a play? They'd say, you make the call, and then they would come back from break and they'd say what the call would be. I love that.
Yeah, I remember those days. But most people don't anymore. We're old, Jesse. I mean, like when people actually watch the game of the week, because that was, and that was the only way you were going to see Jack Clark. If you were in Baltimore playing for the Cardinals that year, he hit all those home runs the first half of the season, or Ryan Sandberg and the Cubs. Except you could see them on WGN, but if you had that as part of your cable package. But yeah, I mean, like we all watched that. I know exactly what you're talking about. They recycled a lot of those too, because I can remember like we'll make the call. Well, I made that call 2 weeks ago, and here it is again. He's out at the plate. We all think we're
Oh,
umpires.
yes.
Have you noticed that? Like we all think we're umpires, and that's a really difficult job. But you'll watch there. It's funny to me how many players and managers don't know the rules of the game at this level. Now, I don't know about the big league level because you get a bench coach that's like an expert on it. But, you'll go down there and they'll say, and I'm talking more maybe like intricate rules or scoring, how come that wasn't a hit? Well, and this happens, or how come, like if someone bloops the ball in the left field and they pick it up and force the guy at third, like I should have got a hit for that, right? No, it's a fielder's choice,
So I'm sitting 2 rows behind my manager. Team bus, we're on a road trip. Manager gets a call from his friend, fellow manager in the league, who's just gotten a run for arguing this call. Runners are at first and third base. 1 out. Fly ball hit to right field. Both runners take off on contact, think it's going to fall. Right fielder makes a great diving catch. Out number 2. Runner from third crosses the plate. He's in the dugout watching. They throw it into first base. They appeal, step on the bag. Runner's out, third out. Team clears the field. The manager was incensed that they counted the run at the plate. And so my manager, sitting there talking to him, was absolutely commiserating and talking about, yes, the umpire got this wrong. You were run out. This should not have happened. I sidled up to my manager with my rule book. I showed him the rule. It's not a force. It's an appeal play. The run counts unless they want to get that 4th out of the inning and throw it over there to third base and appeal there. Then you can erase the run. And my manager stopped in the middle of his phone call, gave a look at the rule book, and said once again to his buddy, I got bad news for you.
Yeah, I've never seen that before. I mean, I didn't even know that. It's like it's amazing. Some of the rules, like I had a game my first season. Pat Listash was our manager. I loved Pat. Had such a good relationship with him and that entire staff. Like it felt like family riding around on the bus and going to the different cities. I think he's a tremendous person, and he would he would catch up with me about rules sometimes. We had one where the umpire got hit by the ball, and the runner got hit by the ball, but the play continued, and it was because the fielder was in front of the runner, right? So he wasn't sure. I said, no, I think we looked it up in the rule book, but I said the whole point of that is that the fielder has to have a chance to get the ball. So the fielder has to be, if the fielder's in front of the runner and has a chance to field it, and it went like right through that person's leg they were playing in, and then it hits the runner, it's not, the runner's not out, right? But he just, I think it was that play or something, but we were clarifying that.
If it hits the runner, did a fielder have a chance or not? If the fielder had a chance, ball remains live. If the fielder didn't have a chance, ball hits the runner first. Immediately, play is dead, runner is out, batter gets a hit.
I've probably done thousands of games since then, and I've never seen that happen again. You know what I mean? Like, it's just weird. Like, there's certain things that happen that you might never see again when it comes to rules. But it obviously happened before because someone saw it and made a rule for it, right? Like the one you're talking about. I cannot imagine that there's a play where a guy scores from third, but since they got the out at first, that run counts, but there were 3 outs recorded on the same play. But if they throw the ball to third, they can get a 4th out, and then they would have four outs, and then the run wouldn't count.
Baseball. You make the call.
Yeah, that's crazy. Yeah, that would have been. I don't know if they would have put that on one of their "you make the call" videos back then. It would have been so confusing. I don't think anyone would have known.
Here's your challenge this week. Can you remember during a minor league game when things have gone wrong, whatever it might be, equipment malfunction, who knows what? We've had ours just trying to get our casts going, and thank goodness we've got this going live right now. So when's a moment that something has gone wrong?
Yeah, Yeah, well, I probably got 50,000 of them. Anytime that I go on the air, something's bound to go wrong. Some guy was tweeting at us spring training last year, and I don't know. He's saying, "Hey, I'm this team's fan, but I got you tuned in, and you guys talking to Len and I. You guys aren't bad so far." And I said, "Well, stick around, and we'll make sure that we change
Keeps
your
us
mind
humble.
on that." It's hey, it's part of doing this. I mean, I don't know. Like I'm amazed at how good some of the people that have done this job, like Vince Gully or John Miller, are at doing it. Or Len, working with Len, where he's just flawless, and can go through, and never have anything go wrong. But you know what? Things go wrong, and it's always how you deal with it. How you when something's not going perfect, stay calm and get it figured out. And once the game's back going, there's always in the minor leagues before we had like internet. Now it's internet, but there's always a problem with the phone line. It's always, you always got some kind of technical difficulty because, a certain team doesn't have good phone lines, and they try to cheat the phone instead of getting like the old fashioned, like mall bell phones, with the copper wire. They got these new digital phones. Well, they know it doesn't work with your equipment, but they have it anyway. Now it's quality of internet. Like you have to have a really good stream to maintain a good broadcast. It's just the way it is. And then some of the teams in the minor leagues, like for whatever reason, whether it's on purpose or accident, the internet's bad. So you're on there, and then people are going, "Hey, where'd you go?"
I had a memorable broadcast once on just that problem. I'm in Beloit, Wisconsin, and we can't get connected via phone line. We can't get connected via any way that I can figure out, internet. And so, Mick, instead, what we did was I talked into my computer microphone, and then the board op picked up that stream and ran that over the air. Oh, by the way,
Yeah.
that game was one where Kendall Graveman took a no-hitter, one out into the ninth inning. Minor League Baseball is tweeting out
Oh,
because
boy.
Beloit does not have a broadcast team for that game. Hey, everybody, listen into Lansing's stream for this potential no-hitter. There I am talking into my computer. It just, you can picture it, right? The screen and me just going, all right, here's the next pitch.
Right. I can picture how bad the quality was on the sound too, and how everyone's going, "This is terrible." It's like, I mean, because I've been there, and it's like, what do I do? But you're in a spot, you don't have an engineer, you do it yourself, where you really have to figure out a way to get it on, and at least people can hear it. But that reminds me of one. I got one. Ben Ingram, who is one of the voices of the Atlanta Braves, was in this league. He's one of my best friends. And the Braves were playing the Smokies, and John Smoltz was here on a rehab. And it was late in his career, right? And he was going to come in to pitch an inning of relief. Ben says to me before the game, "What if the pitcher," and I can't remember his name, throws a no-hitter? Let's say the last name of the guy was Gamble, I think, or something. But what if he throws a no-hitter? And it was like same thing. Like all these people showed up to see Smoltz, right? Fifth inning, no hits. Sixth inning, no hits. Well, Smoltz is supposed to pitch in like the fifth or the sixth or something like that, Well, he tells the manager, like it was, I think, Philip Wellman, "Hey, I'm not going out there if this kid's pitching a no-hitter. He's not coming out on my behalf, And so it gets into the seventh, and someone finally gets a hit, and then Smoltz pitched the eighth. People were happy. But I'm looking at Ben through the window. I mean, like, is this really going to happen? Was this Smoltz really not going to pitch tonight? So I think there's never been a crowd happier than that day. It was a double by Doug Deeds that was like the first Smokies hit, or a home run, and this has been a while off the top of my head, but people were so happy because they got to see Smoltz pitch. But they wouldn't have if the guy kept
Good
going
for
no-hitter.
Smoltz going up to Phil Wellman, I love Phil. I can imagine that conversation
He's
in
great.
the dugout.
Yeah, I'm not doing it, And Smoltz is great on doing this. He's an excellent excellent color analyst to me. I love him.
Told this story during our dress rehearsal, and just as we were trying to get everything ready to go, I'm going to tell it again. Just when things go wrong, the power outage in Montgomery on a Sunday, in which we
Oh
start the
yeah,
games in Montgomery later in the day because that way you get through all of the worst heat of the day. And so because you start it later in the day, power outage, the lights can't go on for the stadium, which means that we need to get the game in while there's still daylight. And it becomes a race to finish the baseball game before sunset. It took us back to the 1920s, 1930s, any time when there were no stadium lights. So for Wrigley Field in the early 1980s. And so we're just trying to finish this game as quickly as possible before that sun can go down in the sky. No scoreboard,
right.
so you
Yeah.
better got your you got your score right there, your balls, your strikes, your runs. You have to keep track of everything by hand at one point because your computer has to have good battery. Doesn't help you to plug it in.
Wow.
Well, for
That
you,
is
have you
crazy.
ever had where you can't trust the scoreboard balls and strikes? Because if you do, you might have a here's the 1-1. Oh,
Ah,
he struck him out.
ah, come on. Listen, that I'm gonna just say it right now. That most of the mistakes that I have on balls and strikes are because someone that is doing that, whatever ballpark I'm at in the minor leagues, has them wrong. I mean,
The
you have to
2-2.
cheat
Oh,
because
he
you're
walked it.
thinking about 50 different things. Yeah, like like right, like and not and you look terrible. You're like, this guy doesn't know the balls and strikes. I'm looking up there, like spring training, they get them right all the time. They're big league games. It's like, that I'm wondering what the guy's doing, where you're having trouble putting up whether it's a ball or a strike. What are you in there? You got popcorn in your hand, or you're doing two other jobs, and that could be the case too. But yeah, it
Have you ever
happens
had this? You knew the balls and strikes. The umpire lost track of it. And so for whatever reason,
once
we
in a
had a
blue moon.
ball player this past year. I think here comes the 4-2 pitch. The umpire didn't know. The pitcher, the catcher, nobody else called it. All of our players in the dugout were completely aware. Whatever it was, whatever the pitch was, our team understood, oh, this guy should not be receiving this pitch right now, but let's not speak up. And meanwhile, the umpires were just letting it go onward.
Yeah, that's happened I mean, occasionally, but not often. At least at this level and at the next level, and they lose track. I mean, they make mistakes like all of us, but they've got help. They've got help that whether the player says something to them or one of the other umpires. But I wouldn't want that job because I'd be the guy to mess it up. It'd be like I'd be the umpire where it's like, here comes the 4-1 pitch, and everybody's looking at me, and I'm like, hey, my bad, I hit the wrong thing on my little,
Clicker.
the little calculator.
Here's another
Yeah,
one.
like so. I
Have you ever
empathize
seen an
with
umpire punch out a
with
batter with strike two?
on TV.
And then
On
the
TV,
catcher,
I
the
have.
batter, the pitcher, everybody understands, but they all have a good laugh at his expense.
Oh, it's so funny. Yeah, I like the umpires that come up with their own strike three punch outs. I like them. The crazier, the better. Like the naked gun guy. You want to do a split and a karate chop, I'm down
Dutch
for it.
Renner, that's my guy.
Uh,
That's who I grew up with.
yeah, it's like this. I like this. I like that. Like this. Not as much. I need this. Like, give me the whole thing here. Or you want to reach and pull. I'm good for that. Like
Tim
that's funny to me.
Calderwood commenting in was encouraging me to tell the Isaac Hess story about when something went wrong. So here we go. 2008, I'm with the Windy City Thunderbolts. Isaac Hess is our pitcher, lefty, great. Artificial hip. Well, leading into that day, one of those great Chicago area thunderstorms rolls through and knocks out all the internet in the press box. And I am an internet-only broadcaster. I cannot call the game from the press box, which means I cannot call the game. And my Thunderbolts are taking on the
Wow.
Midwest Sliders, the road team, the traveling team. They have no broadcaster. So I'm the broadcaster for this game, and where in the world can I call this from? I'm partnered up with Nick Kovac. Well, 3 years earlier, I'd been given the assignment by Jim Lucas, the president of the Brockton Rocks, to do a game recreation.
Jim
Remember
Lucas
Jim?
got my start. Thanks to
He
Jim
used to be a
Lucas.
broadcaster alongside Don Wardlow, who was visually impaired, and Don was his color commentator. Jim and Don would call the games together,
Yeah.
and they would open baseball card packs on the air. They did all sorts of revolutionary things. Jim, for an attention-getting stunt with the Brockton Rocks, asked me and Matt Miola, hey, recreate this game with sound effects back in the studio. I'm benching our #1 broadcaster, Dave Raymond. So Dave gets benched. Matt and I recreate the game with mini bats and ball and glove. And 3 years later, 2008 with Windy City, I realized this is the only way that I can possibly call this game is by having Nick message me what's going on. And I sit in the team front office where they still do have their hardwired internet. And there I stream the game.
Yeah.
So I've got everything set up in this
Really?
empty office. I don't have any sound bites, any kind of effects in the background, whatever it might be. And there are these messages rolling in as I've grabbed 2 mini bats from the shop to clank them against me. You know, here's the pitch.
I knew you did
That's-
that. Yeah, but you've made
Well,
it a
that's
regular
where it
thing.
started, was 2008. Mike Coles, I think, hit 2 home runs. Isaac Hess is out there just throwing the game of his life. He gives up a base hit in the middle innings, I think. But around about the 8th of the 9th inning, the official scorer sends word that we have changed this base hit to an error. I haven't seen it. I don't know. And now I've got Isaac Hess working on the first no-hitter in Windy City Thunderbolts franchise history as I'm sitting in there in the office trying to call the game. And so that was my very first
Jeez.
no-hitter that I did not watch. Then did a post-game
Really?
interview with Isaac. Tell me all about this.
That's so funny. Yeah, that's neat, man. And I know, like, I've read about your recreations. I didn't know how it started.
That's what it all stems
And-
from. And since that 2009 was when I decided
Yeah.
make this a regular part of my season.
Yeah.
Thank you,
awesome, man.
Thunderstorm.
Well, this has been fun. Yeah. Next week, I will be at this time next week in Arizona. I'm leaving on Wednesday.
Beautiful.
I can't wait. I know. Watch it be cold. You know, like that's not I'm not expecting that. But when I get there, it's gonna
Pack
be
your
cold.
sunscreen.
And that's what I normally do. But then I won't have sleeves. And
How many players do you see, by the way, come up in April? Okay, the start of the season, opening day, and they've all got the sunglasses, right? The tan lines right around their eyes.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Kenny
Exactly.
Powers, right?
Nick, that'll do it for this week. I took us over the noon hour on the Eastern time because we had the stop and start for the first run when we talked about Texas Leaguer and the Boston Red Sox broadcast crew.
Yeah.
We got things going.
Technology. Hey, we'll do it next
Hey.
week.
Have a great trip down to spring training.
Baseball's
it
here,
is.
my friends.
Feel it. Bask in it. He's Mick Gillespie. I'm Jesse Goldberg-Strassler. This is the Ballpark Digest broadcaster chat. Big thanks to Kevin Reichard. Check them out, ballparkdigest.com. That'll do it for us.